In 1932, Ben Burney released a recording of an Irving Caesar song called What? No Mickey Mouse? What kind of a party is this? The lyrics of the song begin with religious imagery, with Noah setting up his ark of animals only for one of the cuckoos to cry out the title of the song.
What? No Mickey Mouse? What kind of a party is this?
That might seem like an odd phrase today, but it made more sense in the early 30s. Since Mickey Mouse had first appeared in various shorts in 1928, his fame skyrocketed, with the character quickly becoming a household name. This was also around the time that films with sound became the new standard in Hollywood. Though Mickey had appeared in 2 silent shorts beforehand, it can be said that his appearance in Steamboat Willie was what truly catapulted him into the spotlight. Not only did he emerge as the frontrunner in a series of animated comedy sound characters, but he also represented a new type of family entertainment that Disney was pioneering. His popularity was so widespread that in 1931, the gossip columnist Luella Parsons wrote, "Mickey has a bigger screen following than 9/10 of the stars in Hollywood." This attitude can also be seen in comics of the era, such as this 1934 New Yorker cartoon that references how Mickey had become more popular than Charlie Chaplin, saying, "All you hear is Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse." It's as though Chaplin had never lived. The absolute popularity of Mickey Mouse in the movie industry also meant that many people were expecting to see Mickey Mouse whenever they went to a movie theater. This reportedly led to the phrase, "What? No Mickey Mouse?" giving context to the Irving Caesar song of the same name. However, the most interesting part of the song to me appears about halfway through.
Vote, ladies and gentlemen, vote for Mickey Mouse. Hooray! And make him our next president. Hooray!
The song goes on to elaborate on that, talking about pushing Congress to allow Mickey Mouse to become president and even outlining his policies. The song then ends on the line, "So let's give the White House to slicky, wacky, wicky, Bolsheviki Mickey Mouse." Is this an odd song? Yes, absolutely. However, did you know that the idea of making Mickey Mouse president isn't as far-fetched as you might think? Let's talk about the history of voting for Mickey Mouse and how the cartoon character continues to get votes to this day.
Want to be free, to be on the move, to go for a hike or whatever you like to do. Do all there is to be done. It's fun, it's fun, it's fun. To be free, fun to be free.
In the 2012 US presidential election, voters were not happy with their choices. It can be said that this has happened with virtually every US presidential election, but the ways in which voters express their dissatisfaction differs depending on context. In terms of protest voting, one of the most common methods is simply to not vote at all, or to vote for an alternate candidate or party that accurately reflects one's beliefs. In Effingham County, Georgia, voters took to the polls in a less common but not new way. By using the write-in section of their ballots, many voters cast votes for a variety of different characters, ranging from God to Batman to even the deceased musician Elvis. However, there was one character who was expected to pop up: Mickey Mouse. In fact, according to election supervisor Gail Whitehead, Mickey always gets votes. If he doesn't get votes in our election, it's a bad election. So, as you can see, the idea of voting for Mickey Mouse is something that goes far beyond that Irving Caesar song mentioned at the beginning of this video. But how did we get here? How did we get to the point where some people are more comfortable voting for a cartoon mouse than an actual politician in US elections? To look more into this, we'll have to go back through US history to look at how the country's voting methods have changed over the years. For example, before the Revolutionary War and before the US became technically a thing, votes were sometimes cast out loud and in person. As you might imagine though, this was not the most reliable way of voting and it was very susceptible to manipulation. Even as it became more popular to use only ballots, the vote would still be public, with each voter writing their signature under a certain candidate's name. Though this system had benefits, such as being difficult to manipulate, it became less practical as the US government continued to grow. With technological and societal advancements, printed ballots would become more popular, with voters getting their own sheet, marking their vote, and putting it in a ballot box. As the country became more politically divided in the 19th century, privacy while voting became more important. Though the outbreak of the Civil War forced people to pick political sides, the aftermath of the war found many US Americans using the term vest pocket to refer to voters who preferred to keep their ballots a secret on the way to the voting station. According to Gil Troy, this is where democracy became associated with privacy in American society. To put it simply, in US American society today, there are two main parties, the Democrats and Republicans. However, this two-party system often creates a lot of tension. Unlike voters in other countries that have different systems with more nuance, many US American voters constantly feel like voting isn't a matter of voting for what they believe in, but voting against what they don't want. There are alternative parties, but they don't have much political power in presidential elections. Depending on the state that you're in, you're also able to write in a specific vote. Whether or not this is a legitimate form of voting depends on the state and the election that you're voting in. For example, many states require write-in candidates to be actually registered in some way despite not being on the general ballot. In those situations, writing Mickey Mouse obviously isn't possible, and to do so would be the same as not doing anything at all. It's difficult to say with certainty which election was the first to feature Mickey Mouse as a write-in candidate, but the American Prospect has suggested that the New York mayoral race of 1932 was the first to feature the cartoon character, with Mickey Mouse receiving exactly one write-in vote. Coincidentally, 1932 was also the year that the aforementioned Irving Caesar song was released. Another acknowledgement of the mouse in an election was in 1972, when the New York Times reported that there were 234 write-in votes cast by New York City voters in the presidential election, with some of those indeed being for Mickey. Since then, the mouse has appeared in federal and local elections across the country. Like I mentioned before, Mickey Mouse is not the only name to be included in these protest votes. For example, in 2015, a 15-year-old from Iowa began a joke campaign under the name D's Nuts that actually began to pick up traction in North Carolina, despite not being a legitimate presidential candidate. The fact that joke names often make it into elections doesn't mean that write-in votes are useless, though. Though no write-in candidates have been successful in bids for the presidency, there have been many write-in candidates who have won positions through elections. For example, in 2006, Ohio Congressman Charlie Wilson won 66% of the primary vote through a write-in campaign, eventually leading to him winning a congressional seat. Though the notion of voting for Mickey Mouse seems like such a patently US American thing, it's a phenomenon that has also appeared elsewhere. Mickey Mouse has appeared on write-in ballots in Sweden, showing that the idea of voting for a cartoon character can have power regardless of where you're living. But what power is that? This is a question that I asked myself a lot before I voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the current US presidential election. I know a lot of people who are incredibly frustrated by the current Democrat option. In states like New York, I see friends planning to cast their votes for the Green Party as a way of voting for someone who aligns more with their political beliefs. I also see friends refusing to vote at all, with the assumption being that since they live in New York, the state will be Democrat anyway, so why bother? The common thread between these viewpoints is that they feel left behind by the Democrat Party. When Bernie Sanders was running, the party line was focused on voting for someone who everyone can get behind, with the thought being that not many would vote for Bernie's more relatively radical policies despite the numbers saying otherwise. However, since Bernie dropped out of the race, it feels like they're less focused on appealing to the large younger left Democrat base and instead bending over backwards to appeal to centrists. As I listened to Kamala Harris reassure voters that she and Biden wouldn't ban fracking, I felt sad. It seems as though the discussions about finding a candidate for everyone quickly turned into we'll do whatever we can to cozy up to anti-Trump Republicans. And when movements such as Black Lives Matter have done so much constructive work for highlighting what needs to change about law enforcement, it's disheartening to see that under Biden, the status quo will likely stay the same. This is where I feel the frustration from my fellow leftists. Add on to this the disturbing allegations against Biden, and I feel even more confused, reminded of the game of US American politics that keeps on going. But then I'm reminded of my other friends, the people whose lives are directly affected by the difference between Trump and Biden, whose rights will be continually erased under 4 more years of Trump. And then I think about the fact that as a disabled person, should I choose to live in the US in the future and need it would be even harder for me to receive and advocate for proper healthcare under Trump. I also think of friends who come from countries far away from the US who will still be affected by US arrogance to police and damage things within their reach. That won't stop with Biden, but it helps me understand the concept of damage control. I also think of the confidence that a certain state will be Democrat. In an election that's already being criticized for being rigged, will anything but landslide victory numbers be helpful? It's situations like these that made me cast my vote the way I did. But I'm not here to shame anyone. Many of the people I'm talking about are actively participating in protests and fighting for the rights of others. Conversely, I know many people whose only political actions are defined by their votes and nothing else. I don't think either of those perspectives is where I stand, so I try and continue pushing for the future I want to see, while also taking actions I can in the moment to help people I care about. And for those uncomfortable by how political I'm being on a channel about Disney music, as a queer person, I've never had the luxury of being apolitical. Nor do I think politics is out of the question with a company like Disney, but I'll link to other videos I made about that in the description. It's unlikely that Mickey Mouse will have a significant portion of the presidential vote anytime soon. However, that doesn't mean that he hasn't had some presence in government systems. In fact, in a hilarious mistake earlier this year, the state of Rhode Island accidentally mailed out tax refund checks to 176 people that were signed by Mickey Mouse and Walt Disney. The song What? No Mickey Mouse? What Kind of a Party Is This? Is a unique musical reminder of a serious political trend that is still present in elections around the world. Disney has even acknowledged the song from time to time. In 1970, Buena Vista Records released a single of the song performed by Phil Harris, pairing it with the already popular Mickey anthem Minnie's Yoo-Hoo. The sheet music for the song can also be seen in the library scene of the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror attractions at Disney's Hollywood Studios in Florida and the Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris. In recent years, there have also been other songs written about electing Mickey Mouse, serving as a reminder of that interesting phenomenon. So my words are just that, my words. But in such a tense political time, I would regret not saying something by talking about a piece of Disney history that some people don't know about. No matter where you are, it can be helpful to think through your options and make sure your vote can help others. Apathy can have a political purpose, but I don't think it should replace empathy. But please don't vote for Mickey Mouse. Who's the leader of the club that's made for you and me? Mickey-Mouse. Hey there, hi there, ho there, you're as welcome as can be. Mickey-Mouse. Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse. Forever let us hold our banner high. Come along and sing the song and join the jamboree. Mickey